It is Free Speech Friday time, the half hour at the end of the week where we get a couple of free speakers and we just yarn about the events of the week and what has gone on, and a pretty good panel this morning. From the far north where it has been raining is Shane Jones, Northland candidate for New Zealand First. Shane, kia ora, mate, how are you?
Greetings, good morning, kia ora.
All right, and from the heart of, or from the ley line of political activity in New Zealand, the Backbencher pub, where all sorts of plots are cooked up and puppets sit and look down and pass judgment on our existing politicians. Boyce from the Backbencher pub. Boyce, how are you, mate?
Kia ora, Morena.
All right, you haven't considered, Boyce, now that you've been rejected by the National Party. I was just wondering, have you given John Tamahiri a ring, because he seems to be in the market for MPs or for candidates?
A little bit radical for me.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not ready for revolution.
Good on you. Look, what an interesting week. First up, Shane Jones, you have a new voter, New Zealand First. His name is Chris Trotter. And he could have knocked me down with a feather yesterday when live on the program he told me he's voting, his party vote is going to New Zealand First. That must fill, and Winston quickly came on to welcome him into the fold. It is a weird world we're living in, isn't it, when Trotter's one of your people?
Oh, no, he's drawn to the fact that we stand for foundation values. We're not into this modern-day political clairvoyancy, otherwise called Ngāti Wokutanga, and we're struggling in terms of the fact that the media won't give suitable coverage. But what he's attracted to, I've no doubt, and he's an incredibly gifted writer and a very penetrating thinker, is that he realises that with all this flakiness that defines modern political culture, we've got to recover what really made us who we are today, and it's not to be found in the caucus of the Labour Party.
Boyce, would you ever have picked Chris Trotter as a New Zealand First voter?
No, but his thinking was sound. He worked it all through, and I think he landed where he could land. There was nowhere else for him left.
I'll tell you what, though, David Seymour not convinced this morning. I don't know if you heard Seymour. He was kicking the hell out of you guys, Shane. He still says you're nowhere, men. You're nowhere close to 5%. We had an argue about the Roy Morgan poll and the Curia poll, but he doesn't like you at all. And I presume that is because he sees ACT and New Zealand First competing for the same party votes. I'm not absolutely convinced that that's true, Shane.
No, he's a supporter of this transphobia that has ruined the English language and has created so much confusion in the census. That's why so few people, in my view, have bothered to fill the census in. He is a magpie. And I have to acknowledge he's been very, very cunning in stealing most of New Zealand First ideas in terms of the culture war.
He says you're not going to get there, Shane. He says, and there was some talk, I talked to Trotter about it, the idea of a deal in Northland. He says without that, you're not going to get to 5%.
Well, we've got a lot of knockers out there, but our job, obviously, is to move amongst the people. We've got zero confidence that we'll get adequate coverage from the mainstream media. But, people are writing us off in the ACT Party largely because they fear that we'll hold not only them to account, but will ensure that the ragged edges that he continually promotes and actually doesn't believe in it, half of what he says, that's what they fear about us.
Look, yesterday... look, Boyce, what do you think? Do you think ACT are afraid of New Zealand First, or it's all just posturing, mate?
Oh, well, we all know that ACT and New Zealand First don't get on, but I'll tell you this, Winston Peters and Shane Jones will get 5%. As soon as co-governance reared its ugly head in the form it has from this divisive Labour government, this was easy fodder for Winston, and he will absolutely get there.
Mind you, I have to say, finally this week, guys, Chris Luxon stood for something more than a photo opportunity at the McDonald's drive-through. And he comes out and he says, I am not doing a deal with the Maori Party. Do you think it's the craziness, Boyce, in Parliament this week with all these independent Maori lesbian MPs that drove him to say that? Or do you think he came to a realisation, unless he stood for something, he was in danger of perhaps snatching defeat from the jaws of victory come election time?
I think he was waiting for the excuse to make the point and waiting for the right time. I think that's where it's at, and he had to do it, and I wouldn't have wanted to leave it any later.
Yeah.
But there is no way you could go into a stable government arrangement from national stretching over to party Maori. It's just not possible.
Shane, what do you think took Luxon so long? Does he really believe it? Was it a political decision he made to make that announcement this week?
Well, the Maori Party, I just wonder every time they go to Parliament whether or not they've sort of got an EpiPen on automatic injection or something. No, seriously, the things they're saying are more feverish by the day. So I'm not surprised that he moved away from them, because in actual fact, their performance not only... I don't know, just showed some sort of disorder, and ordinary Kiwis can't be bothered with that because they've got a host of other more important
Well, they have
about.
doubled their caucus, in theory, without even going to an election or a by-election. They've now got 4 MPs, effectively, Shane. That's pretty good work.
Well, what they've got is a spear carrier, and there's no guarantee that Nika Whaitiri either will win her seat. And as I've said elsewhere, mate, in politics, when you cheat, it's a choice. It's not a mistake.
Right. And I guess, Boyce, and I guess to both of you, I've got to say the role of the Speaker, particularly in relation to Mika Whaitiri, looks bloody dodgy, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was disappointed. I thought he had more to him than that, the Speaker. And it, it's just a misuse of public funds, and the entitlement and arrogance that I find it disconcerting, to say the least.
Do you agree, Shane?
I was astounded that Mika Whaitiri was not ordered out of politics. It seemed to be a slam dunk to me. And perhaps the precedent may have been Jamie Lee Ross, but I mean, if the ventriloquist JT is using that as a precedent, then things don't bode well for either him, the party, or Mika.
Yeah. It seems too the mainstream media are desperate for some reason, and I'm trying to figure out why. You guys might be able to help me, to paint the Maori Party as the kingmakers rather than part of the centre-left coalescence. That seems, and JT's in all, he won't come on for an interview with me, even though I know him well, but in the Post this morning, he's talking to Steve Kilgallen with an absolutely naive political piece about what they want to be part of a government, and they're really being branded as the Great Brown Hope, aren't they, Shane?
Yeah, I haven't had a look at the stuff this morning. Look, let's just step back. JT and the Maori Party are hoping to gather votes by going as far to the margin as possible, boosting their Maori appeal and trying to nick the votes from the people that drifted to Labour, drifted to the Green Party, because they're looking for some revolutionary change.
Yeah.
In actual fact, that's not the way Kiwis operate. And he's had the impact of scaring voters away from his potential coalition partners. Christopher Luxon, he seems to be rooting for the fact that he'll govern with a Klingon of the ACT Party. But, you know, MMP, you and I know, guys, it is so random and so unpredictable. And Winston and I haven't even hit our straps. So just wait and see.
Yeah. Boyce, do you get the feeling the battle lines are being drawn, or is there still some shaking down to go?
Oh, there's always plenty of shaking down going into the election, Sean. It'll be riveting, and it will be a great ride, and I'm looking forward to lots of discussions with Winston in the dockway as it all unfolds in front of our eyes.
And for those who don't know, Winston may enjoy standing next to people who are having cigarettes in the dockway out the back of the backbencher pub is where you can smoke. It's one of the few places You can smoke undercover in Wellington and have a beer at the same time. It is a fine spot. So that's what.
And you can have a hell of an interesting conversation, especially if Winston's in the middle of it.
Yes, you can.
There's a flock of seagulls come in.
In fact, I remember having a rather good night there on the night of your valedictory from the Labour Party, Mr. Jones. It was quite the spot.
Half of Wellington emptied out the bloody chemists of all the disciplines, mate.
Yeah, that was right, the next morning. Look, we're going to have a quick break, guys, and then I want to talk about woke rich people who want to pay more tax. It is 8:45.
Morris and Morris Funerals in Whangarei, one of the principals of that particular organisation, and that is Kerry Griffin. Kerry, good morning to you. Before we even start, how do I get to you? Have you got a website?
Well, first of all, phone number is on the top of my head. Call 0800 Morris, which is 0800 66 7767.
I think it's morrisandmorris.co.nz, isn't it? All right. Now, what do you think makes Morris & Morris different from other funeral directors?
Definitely the people. Without a doubt, my team make all the difference. Morris & Morris also has purpose-built funeral homes in Whangarei and Dargaville. We're members of the Funeral Directors Association of New Zealand, and we have embalmers that are members of the Embalmers Association.
You provide a complete service. I'm interested in the cost. What does it cost these days for a funeral?
Some people just want a very simple no-service service, which is like a direct cremation or something, and then ashes are returned and the family will have a memorial service or a celebration of life service with the ashes. If
I'm going to die, let's just say it's me tomorrow, the cheapest option you've just said to me is there's that one about getting cremated and then leaving it to the family and stuff like that. You take charge of that process. What would that cost me?
You're looking anywhere upwards from the most simple, probably $5,000 plus.
Right, so it starts at 5 and then I build up. Would it be a reasonable assumption to believe that if I was going to go the traditional funeral service, would I be looking at a price closer to 10,000 or 8,000?
Definitely closer to 10,000 and, as I said, plus. Right. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, finally, people want to get in contact with you. www.morrisandmorris.co.nz is your website, and 0800 Morris is your free calling number. Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you, Kerry. Very best of luck in your job, and as I said, you are a bit of a beacon of light in dark times, actually. It's nice to have somebody looking after all that. So thank you for joining us on the show this morning.
We've learned how appallingly prickly and intolerant society has become of even the mildest adverse comment.
What you have to say counts on the platform.
All right, you are on the platform. It's Free Speech Friday. We've got Shane Jones, New Zealand First candidate, and Alister Boyce, publican from the Backbencher pub across the road from Parliament in Wellington with us. Guys, this letter came out yesterday from supposedly rich people, though it looks like the criteria for being rich is that you can pay for your bus fare. Basically saying on the back of the IRD report that Parker released, we should pay more tax, there should be capital gains tax. I had Ian Taylor on this morning. He says he's never coming on the program again because, to be honest, it sounded like he didn't really know what it was all about. Your first impression, Boyce, here of this letter and what it's designed for?
I think it's a bit of a yawn. It's a whole host of Labour supporters going back many years who have decided to band together under some umbrella and support the Labour government in their endeavour to fleece us of our wealth.
All right. Shane Jones, I think Chris Trotter called it the ghost of citizens for rolling. Does it look like a political jack-up rather than a genuine, spontaneous, open letter to you?
Yeah, no, it's phony baloney. And the sad thing is that the more money you hand over to the civil service at a time where they can't even cope with organising the clean-up of Hawke's Bay shows you that money will only enlarge the civil service and would never lead to a quality output of fixing the country up. In actual fact, there's at least 20 or 30,000 civil servants who need to go. And if you actually want to use your own money and improve the coherence of society, there's no shortage of NGOs who'll take your money who are working with those who are down at heel.
Well, it looks, guys, like it was jacked up by Oxfam. And Oxfam are hardly the most politically neutral charity. And another group set up just last year called Tax Justice Aotearoa. Obviously, some PR was involved in the release of all this stuff. And Ian Taylor this morning, Boyce, he sounded like he'd been played.
Oh dear, that's sad. He's a good guy and a stalwart of the country. So it's very unfortunate if he's been played. But I imagine, as with most of these people and organisations, the means justify the ends. So they've got their message out there with the names on the list. So I don't know if they really care about whether Ian Taylor's been stitched up or not.
Yeah. Shane, it also seems to me to be fundamentally anti-democratic, and that is if you can get 90 famous people to say something. It has more sway in this country than 900,000 people who aren't well known saying something.
Look, I couldn't agree more. If it came from Oxfam, that means it has got the fingerprints of whoever took over from Phil Twyford. So anyone who follows politics, even at a marginal level, would know that the training ground for Phil Twyford was Oxfam. So I need to tell you no more as to how useless and irrelevant that contribution will be.
Yeah. I also note that David Cunliffe signed the letter, and he must be sorry for being a taxpayer.
He's apologising for being a man again.
Yeah, well, for being a man who doesn't pay enough tax now, I think, Alister, I think the apologies, the things he has to apologise are going. Look, in a broader sense, guys, I've been doing a bit of this because I've been looking at things like Chanel Lal ending up as the poster boy for the Mental Health Foundation's Anti-Bullying Day next Friday. I've been looking at this letter and Oxfam. I've been looking actually at the fact that the Asia New Zealand Foundation climbed in on this tax issue yesterday, then had to withdraw what they had said on social media. And Shane, you're probably the person who has more insight into this. We have a hell of a lot of foundations which are registered charities, which essentially make all their money from government grants to deliver contracts for programs, and Inside Out's one of them, the trans gay people who have infected our school system. It seems to me there's a whole industry, largely I have to say for ex-MPs and politicians, where you set up a charitable foundation which is not subject to the Official Information Act, can operate supposedly independent of government. You give it government money through a contract for services, and you stack it with politically aligned people, many of them ex-politicians. It kind of seems that is the way that much of our NGO sector is run, Shane.
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is the current Labour Party have built a massive echo chamber, aided also by the Greens. And what they can't achieve with the hoi polloi, they're building all of these centres of applause, all these echo chambers that they can race out press statements. And really what they're hell-bent on doing is guilt-tripping those of us who don't buy into the woke-mania.
Yeah. Okay,
you're not allowed to use the word woman. I wrote an article and said, I've just had a guts full of whatuora. And see, even that, if you don't call them whatuora, you're criticised. If you do call them whatuora, no bugger knows what you're talking about.
Yeah,
so there's this circuitous, cynical attempt to invert our culture without a democratic mandate. And that is why I firmly believe both Winston and I will be back guns blazing.
Yeah. Alister, have you seen it? Do you get it yet? And I don't, look, I've always known it was there. I never realised when I started looking at things like New Zealand On Air funding and how all these government organisations work. Boyce, has the penny dropped with you yet?
Yeah, no, I've written about it quite a few times and talked to you about it quite a few times. It is an echo chamber, and they're all scratching each other's back and beating each other and building on each other, and it doesn't spread out to the rest of the country, the rest of the nation. Most of the nations look at the Wellington bubble and just can't believe what's going on and what's coming out of it.
Yeah.
And they're astounded and amazed. And, the real pressure that the world has disappeared into the distance. They don't matter to the Wellington Eco Chamber. All that matters is what goes on inside their own
and their government
bubble.
grants. And I'd look at it and say the disinformation project and the rubbish that spends, and the fact that it is supported by the Royal Society of New Zealand via the Science Media Centre, which is funded by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Enterprise. That is the classic echo chamber propaganda organisation, entirely set up so it doesn't look like it's part of the government or the administration, but absolutely bloody is, right?
Manipulative tentacle of wokeness.
Yeah. Shane, the question, I guess, is with all of these things and with all of these, and I'll call them outrages because they do kind of tend to outrage me. If there is a change of government, and given how well hidden and buried all these foundations and funds are, will we have a new government that is committed to dismantling them?
Well, if I have anything to do with it, they'll be eviscerated. That's the first thing. The second thing, when Douglas came in with Longy, remember they got Trotter involved. They got some hard-nosed, extraordinarily experienced people who knew how to live within your means.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to go back to. Our country no longer has the ability to live within its means. Our country no longer rewards plain, common sense, very candid discussions. I wouldn't bother following the model of Jacinda, which was to set up 1,000 working parties. What I was asked to do, I just got on with it and done it. I was asked to fix up infrastructure and other issues in provincial New Zealand and did it. Yes, I did get investigated by the audit office several times, but that's the cost that you have to bear if you want to make progress. At the moment, we're just beset with process, mate, and the people that run the process are people that belong to that ecosystem of foundations and political correctness that you just described. We've got to go back to what made the country great, which is rolling your sleeves up and getting stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Boise, can I ask you, Elizabeth Kerry and Meka Whaiteri coming over to the backbencher for independent caucus meetings or not?
Not that I'm aware of, Sean. They're more than welcome. There might be a few odd looks that go on and bewilderment at their behaviour.
Yeah. Do any Maori Party MPs drink at the pub?
Yep. They pop in. There's a lot of court cases and things that go on, so we do have quite a contingent rolling through regularly.
Yeah. and gee, sure, I'll be hoping Jones gets back in because that'd be good for business, wouldn't it? Look, Shane, Shane, I can't let this week go past, or the last couple of days, without making mention, because it's your neck of the woods, this terrible case in Whangarei with the schoolboy and the flooding the other day. What a gutting experience for all involved there.
Yeah, no, incredibly traumatic. And there's so many people who have been safely and returned safely from Abbey Caves. The name actually goes back to some of the early pioneer families around Whangarei, including the Clotworthys.
Yeah.
And look, there'll be an investigation, and there's a lot of pain and anguish all over the place, mate. But I would just put a plea out that let the facts guide us forward, not overreaching, which has the effect of stopping schools actually taking any more excursions, but ascertain what was the breakdown in this particularly awful case.
Yeah. Now, look, the other thing I said at the opening of the show this morning, yes, you asked legitimate questions about the safety of kids. There is stuff to be investigated here which will generate headlines. The fact is he's the tangi is still going on. He's going back to his home marae. And I was going to ask both of you, as much as, the public have a right to know and everything, and in a case like this, nothing's going to bring him back. Can we wait a few days before we start generating the outrage and pointing the finger at someone? Can we put the poor fella on the ground first?
I couldn't agree more. The marae where he's going to, My kids have an affiliation with that marae. It's a tiny little marae on the shores of the Hokianga Harbour, near Mangamuka, Kohu, an old Kauri town there on the Hokianga Harbour. And you're absolutely right. Let's respect the dignity of the lad. Let's respect the dignity of the whānau involved before red blood flashes across every newspaper or media outlet.
Yeah. Boise?
Yeah, show some respect and give some peace and space to the situation, and all will be revealed in time. As a parent, I would have been incredibly upset at the loss or potential loss, just give it some space. Yeah.
All right, guys. Hey, thank you both for joining me this morning. We will talk again very, very soon. That was a great Free Speech Friday. Alister Boyce and Shane Jones, our Free Speech Friday participants, this Friday morning.